I'm Ainsley Earhart.
I'm Charles Payne.
I'm Martha McCallum, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Friday, January 1st, 2021. I'm Dave Anthony. Happy New Year! Something we have all been waiting to say, and finally get rid of the old one.
And I think this year we have to make that more profound. In a sense where we're going to say, all right, 2021 it has to be a better year than 2020. It can't not be.
I'm Lisa Brady. Before the summer surge of COVID, when many parts of the U.S. were reopening, SpaceX launched a key flight and renewed dreams of space tourism, which might eventually be within reach for people other than millionaires.
Would you forego 2 years of saved money for vacations for one trip into space? I bet you will.
I'm Liz Peek. I've got the final word on the Fox News Rundown.
Did you wake up feeling different? Has a weight been lifted off your shoulders? It's finally New Year's Day, and we can say good riddance to 2020, something people have been wanting to do for a while. I mean, it really was a rough year for so many people. The pandemic cost a lot of lives and many livelihoods, putting people out of work and putting a lot of distance between us and friends and family. I didn't hug my mom all year between travel bans and COVID fears, and I know I am hardly alone in that. So we can all hope for a much better 2021. Hope that the vaccines can finally end this pandemic and life can return to normal as we turn the page and maybe even resolve to do something new or do something better or do something to make us better.
People look at the new year as a brand new foundation, right? Start something new. Let's start going to the gym. Let's take up a new goal, a new activity, whatever it might be.
Tom Kirsting is a licensed psychotherapist in New Jersey.
So 2020 being probably the most difficult year, maybe in history, I think this is a very good opportunity for people to look themselves in the mirror and say, you know what, I have to put this past year behind me, and all I could do is look ahead. I got to put 2020 in a rearview mirror, and now I'm looking through the windshield, and I am going to make 2021 the best year I possibly can. And the psychology behind that is it's basically, it's an intentional mindset. It's an intentional sitting down with yourself, using some visualization strategies, and seizing control of your thoughts instead of them controlling you.
All right, so when you say visualization strategies, you mean just sit down and write it on paper? And what are people supposed to think about?
Well, check this out, right? So a lot of people don't really understand how the mind works, right? So the average person has, it's estimated, 60,000 thoughts per day, right? So most of our thinking is that wandering, daydreaming mind, and that's typically thinking that's in the past about what has happened and filled with fear and despair and so forth. So using visualization as a conscious effort where you sit down, you don't even have to sit, you could be in your car. It's just taking a breath of air and becoming present in this moment and now steering your thinking, having a little conversation, a little self-talk with yourself that, I am going to, do A, B, C, or D this upcoming year. So you're essentially taking control of thinking instead of your thinking taking control of you, which is how most of us live, believe it or not.
Well, 2021 on the calendar looks different, but we're still in the middle of this pandemic. We still don't have, this solved yet. I know the vaccines are going out, and that's obviously important. But is it the psychology is just changing the calendar, just a different viewpoint? That helps?
Well, I think there's a mental component there. I remember before my gym, which actually shut down forever, I'd go every day. I've been doing that for so many years. And that first week of, after January 1st, it's all of a sudden there's like 3 times the amount of people at the gym.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden that would start fading away. So people look at the new year as a new beginning. And I think this year we have to make that more profound. In a sense where we're going to say, all right, 2021 it has to be a better year than 2020. It can't not be. So it's sort of like, the mentality of when you're given lemons, you make lemonade. A lot of what we do is a mindset. A lot of people have been hit hard with this. People are on lockdown, they're in shutdown, but it also depends how you look at that. One way of looking at that is, all right, well, I've had more time to spend with my family this year. So we got to try to take the positives with the negatives and hopefully highlight the positives more than the negatives.
A lot of people are depressed about politics, right? I mean, we have a very polarizing election. We have a change in who's going to be the president later on in January. Is there something that people can do to get out of that?
Well, basically, where are most people getting a lot of their information? Well, they're sort of marinating their minds in social media all day long. And I call social media the tailpipe of the mainstream media. So, everybody now feels that they have some part in what's going on. They could give their opinions. They could yell at each other, shout at each other, say mean things to one another. Best thing to do is disconnect yourself from social media and reconnect yourself with your own being and your close family members, and kind of get back to planet Earth. Get out of that cyber world where your mind is literally being hijacked, and get back to the real world. Spend time with your family. Focus on your goals and aspirations for 2021.
People aren't going to just stop using their social media. So what do you suggest they do to pull back necessarily, to find a way to do it less? What's the best way?
The best thing is to do a stone cold detox.
Really?
Social media. Yes, 100%. So make a commitment to yourself. Of course we can do that. Make a commitment to yourself that you are not going to be going on whatever it is, Facebook, whatever site where you're making yourself all upset.
A lot of people get their news every day from that, though, Tom. A lot of people do every day rely on that.
They do. I mean, but that's go to news sites then. Like social media isn't really news. It's more people's opinions that they're kind of spewing out there, and then you get all kinds of negative feedback and so forth. But a little detox doesn't mean to escape forever. It just means to ungrip yourself from the clutches mentally of that stuff. And what this will do, Dave, is it'll allow people to sort of to reset. Okay, to now focus on their priorities, to focus on what they're grateful for. And it'll free up hours of time in a day where they're sort of hypnotized and down this dark tunnel of social media, and they'll be able to hit the reset button.
You hit a reset button, but it's tough to change your patterns. It's tough to change your behavior. Why? How does a resolution succeed? I mean, so many fail. You talked about the gym. People stop going after a few weeks of this new resolution. How do you make it work?
Well, here's the deal. So, we are creatures of habit. Everything we do the same way. The way we walk, the way we shower, the way we drive.
It feels good to do that, right? It's part of a pattern of routines.
It's the way our mind works. We get into a routine, and now we don't need to think anymore. Our subconscious mind does it for us. So what we have to do is kind of almost use some willpower initially. So to create a new habit means you have to go against your instinct. It feels uncomfortable getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to that gym every day. But you have to force yourself to do that for a good 3 to 4 weeks until that now becomes a new habit, where it just becomes a routine. That's how our brain works. That's how our mind works psychologically. To form a new habit requires work initially, and then it becomes sort of a gravy train. It becomes much easier. The number one is you have to tell yourself, look yourself in the mirror and say, I am going to do A, B, C, or D. And then do it no matter what happens. If that alarm goes up at 5 in the morning and that your bed seems just way too comfortable, get on your feet before you could think, and start creating that new habit.
Is it sometimes that we're a little too generic in a resolution where it fails? This year I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'll lose 15 pounds. That's a goal. But, I mean, that's not something I'm changing my patterns and behavior for every day.
Yeah, well, even, so talk about something like weight loss. If you say to somebody, hey, do you think you could lose 100 pounds? And I've dealt with many people helping them lose weight. Oh, my God, that seems like so impossible. Do you think you could lose 10? Yeah, I think I could do that. Great, we're going to focus on 10. So anything we do is a reflection of what we're thinking. So that's the whole key to taking control of thought, having a little mantra, repeating to yourself, you know what? I am going to lose 10 pounds in the month of January, and nothing is going to stop me. I am going to lose 10 pounds in the month of January, nothing is going to stop me. Repetition for our mind is what seals the deal inside our mind subconsciously, and we'll begin to our actions will be the reflection of that.
I've seen different ideas on resolutions, and some people talk about changing your space around you or declutter or things like that. Does that work?
100%. So our space around us, all right, so if we have clutter around us and so forth, those are called energy drainers. Right? They actually bring us down. So that's a great example, Dave. So, anybody listening right now, let's say that, your car is a mess, all right, and you commute a lot in your car. You don't even realize the impact that's having on you mentally. So go clean your car. It creates a clean mentality and a clean inside. If your room, your bedroom, or your living room is a mess, clean it up. Decluttering those external things declutters our mind and our emotions, no question about it.
Now, I also saw that one of the lists suggested that one of the resolutions could be to start therapy. And it made me wonder, does everybody need therapy?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So I've been a therapist for 20 years in private practice. And a lot of people, they have this assumption that, you have to have problems to go to a therapist.
Right. Well, I'm not crazy. I don't have to go see a guy.
Exactly. And what's interesting is every person that comes to my office, I never look at as having a problem. I look at as having a solution, okay? So we got to destigmatize that. Realize that, your purpose, if you're thinking of considering going to see a therapist, isn't because you have problems and you're crazy. It's to improve yourself. It's to challenge yourself. All right, it's to have somebody hold you accountable, teach you how to think the correct way so that you can establish that New Year's resolution, so that you can lose the 10 pounds, so that you can take the actions to pursue whatever your career dreams are and actually do it and not let fear get in your way.
Because you're an expert on children and what devices can do to kids, and you have your book, Disconnected, How to Protect Your Kids from the Harmful Effects of Device Dependency, I have to ask, can you help your kids with a resolution to do less screen time, or do you just demand it?
Well, well, that's a very good question, Dave, because the problem with these screens is they're designed, to really clutch the minds and habits of kids. So it really is the responsibility of the parent. Like, you could try to teach your kids, all right, you're going to be responsible with this. They're just not capable of doing it. Mm-hmm. We have to be responsible for them, and we have to hold them accountable. So if your kid is playing video games for, countless hours a day, it's important that parents establish a specific rule, such as, all right, you're not getting any more than 45 minutes a day. And is your kid going to give you backlash? Yes. But what we have to remember is that's part of parenting.
What has Screen School done to the dependency of kids on devices?
Well, 2012, when, smartphones really started coming on the scene, from that point until present is when the deterioration of the mental health among our youth began, and it has just skyrocketed out of control epidemically. The COVID lockdown, with kids being isolated in their rooms and having online schooling and so forth, has now added another serious layer on top of that, where the mental health and the problems have skyrocketed even more. Suicide is up. It has been up. It's even up more now, because human beings aren't really meant to be sort of, imprisoned, I guess you could say. We're meant to be out there socializing, interacting, especially kids, and that's kind of been stripped away from our kids nowadays. And it's a tough situation, but we have to make the best of it. And if that means that we, the parents, have to spend a lot more time interacting with our kids, even though they don't really want to interact with us, then we have to make sure that we do that for our children.
Maybe family dinner time would be a good resolution, right?
100%. I talk about that extensively in my book, the importance of sit-down family meals with one another, and all the statistics on that. With the families that do that regularly, the kids are much more likely to not have mental health issues, more likely to do better in school, more likely to graduate college, all these great things just from having family dinner most nights of the week without any interruptions.
Tom Kirsting, licensed psychotherapist in New Jersey. Happy New Year. Thanks very much for joining us.
Same to you, Dave. My pleasure.
This is Liz Peek with your Fox News commentary coming up.
Hi, I'm Lisa Brady. 2020 turned out to be a turning point of sorts for NASA and SpaceX. In between the surges of COVID-19, we spoke with astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson about that partnership and other issues, including space tourism. I hope listening gives you a little escape from earthly concerns.
A nearly decade-long drought recently ended for NASA.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
SpaceX launching the first U.S. astronauts from U.S. soil since the Space Shuttle program ended. The Dragon capsule arriving at the International Space Station about 19 hours after the May 30th launch.
Soft capture confirmed. Stand by for retraction and docking.
Which was hailed by some as ushering in a new era of commercial space flight. though space tourism has already been around for 2 decades now. And not everyone was quite so hyped up about the SpaceX mission.
It's not as though private enterprise was never a part of space exploration. They've always been a part of space exploration.
Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson is an author and TV host and director of New York's Hayden Planetarium.
And in fact, right out here on Long Island, I live in New York City, there's a town called Bethpage where Grumman Aerospace was based. They designed and built the LEM, the Lunar Excursion Module, the thing that just that detached from the command module and landed on the moon. And people to this day stand proud. They had an uncle, an aunt, a parent who worked there to make that happen. The difference was this was all sort of NASA spec'd. And of course, it was tax-based paid, tax money paid for all of that. So when the rocket launched, you didn't see any private company names on it. You just saw United States and NASA. So now NASA says, well, we want to send astronauts back to the space station. Who's got a rocket? so now SpaceX rises, hey, we got a rocket. And so does it meet the specs? Fine. I mean, is it safe? Yes. So the difference is that NASA is shopping for its hardware rather than being the creator of it. But when people look at this and think private enterprise opening a new frontier, that's not quite right.
So far, I think only the Russian space agency has sent a tourist into space, and there have been several. Where do you stand on space tourism?
Tourism is probably the first door you would open to commercialize space. Okay. I mean, space is already commercialized in the sense that we have like direct TV, right? There's satellites giving you images, and those are privately owned and privately launched. So it's not as though commercial enterprise hasn't entered space. And look at Uber. Uber would not exist were it not for space assets, specifically the GPS satellites. But if you want humans in space, I'm thinking tourism, right? And if you want to turn a space program into a space industry, you got to find ways that people are going to want to spend their disposable money on space assets. And so tourism would be a very potent way to begin that. And then maybe you'd open up asteroids for asteroid mining, all right? All kinds of resources are on asteroids, stuff that we dig hard on Earth to find and we're running out of. There's plenty of that on asteroids. So there's definitely a future there. And I've said many times, I think the world's first trillionaire will be the first person who exploits the natural resources on asteroids.
Yeah, I mean, and when it comes to space tourism, it's not like right now, a lot of us have a spare $20 million or so to go take a ride in space.
Yeah, that was the ticket, if I remember correctly. I think you did your homework on that one.
But I mean, because I think the first space tourist, I didn't realize it had been so long. I think it was Dennis Tito, if I have his name right, in 2001. I almost forgot about him. Yeah. Then, that's 19 years ago. Yes.
Well, we needed also the space station as a place to visit. So the space station wasn't really completed until 20 years ago. So, but yeah, so here's the thing. No, right, not everyone has 20 million. If you have $1 billion, 20 million is lunch money. But every dollar less than 20 million, there's somebody who can afford that, right? So if one person does it for 20 million, might there be 5 people who do it for 10 million? And then 10 people who do it for 5 million, right? And you keep coming down the ladder. And then maybe 100 people would do it for $1 million, but now they keep dropping. Maybe it's $100,000, okay? Or $50,000 or $10,000. What do you spend to fly the family on a week-long vacation, right? There's hotel, there's airfare, there's car, it adds up. You're in the multiple thousands of dollars at that point. Would you forego 2 years of saved money for vacations for one trip into space? I bet you will, for example. So I think economists would say it's a highly elastic demand.
Well, there's a company called Space Adventures that has worked with Russia on, sending people into space. Now, they have a new deal for a trip to the space station that would include a spacewalk, and a Russian cosmonaut would be with the spacewalking tourist. But astronauts train for years to do what they do. I mean, is this just getting into territory that's a little too risky?
Yes, on some level. But let's rethink what you just said in a fresh light. All right. We all saw the movie or read the book, The Right Stuff. All right. And, what do those astronauts go through? There's a centrifuge and they're left out in the wilderness and there's survival training and all of this. Well, that's in case the capsule doesn't enter orbit and it lands in the desert. Okay. That's why they go through that training, just in case stuff goes wrong in a bad way. And that was an entirely new frontier. So now, no, that's not going to happen. And even if it does land somewhere uncomfortable, we'll pick you up within an hour. Okay. We have total access to basically everywhere on Earth with planes and helicopters and ships. So, no, you don't need a week of survival training. I mean, to be able to survive a week and eat bugs, right? No, that's just not necessary. So the right stuff can just be sort of the adequate stuff today, right? If you want to think about it in those terms. And the safer the mission is, and the more flexible the spacesuits are, and the more efficiently that's all constructed, I don't see why a physically fit, ordinary person couldn't then do what the astronauts today are doing.
Do you think that this horrible pandemic we're really still in the middle of will give people some new perspective about our place in the universe? And I ask this partly because there's an actual view from space being offered by 3 space agencies, including NASA, showing changes, environmental, agricultural, that you can see from space as this tragedy has unfolded on the planet.
With COVID, my hope is that this will be an excuse for people to, maybe we should listen to scientists going forward. Not only that, you can think of COVID as an alien invader. No, it's Earth-based, yes. But what would an alien invader do? They would come to Earth, and they won't care what your skin color is or what God you worship on what day of the week or where you live on Earth. They're an invader. They're attacking everybody. So if you have an alien invader attacking everybody, you have to come together as a species to protect yourself. It requires cooperation. It requires a level of communication and cooperation that is not common in geopolitics. So for me, it's an excuse to sort of oil the hinges of or the moving parts of international cooperation. Because what does it mean for you, we wanting to kill one another when there's something else that wants to kill us both? Okay, what an occasion to hold hands and defend Earth and ourselves. So COVID, if enough people thought about COVID in that way, I think that could transform international politics, possibly permanently, for the better.
I find it really hard to wrap my head around our place in the universe, like just how tiny even our entire solar system is in the grand scheme of things.
There's nothing wrong with you for not being able to do that. You said it.
I'm not the only one. Do you think
you're just fine? All right.
You think there's life on other planets, in other solar systems and galaxies?
I'm given no reason to doubt that likelihood, because when you study the problem, all parameters of that problem point to the affirmative in the chances of there being life. For example, what are we made of? Well, hydrogen and nitrogen and oxygen and calcium. These are some of the most common ingredients in the universe. So we're not made of anything special. And how long did it take life to arise after it had its first chance to do so? Maybe 100 million years. We see this from the fossil records. 100 million sounds like a long time, but the Earth has been around for 4.5 billion. That's a very small fraction of the total time we've been around. And so Earth, almost as early as it possibly could have, figured out a way to make life. We still don't know how to do it in the laboratory, but Earth figured it out. So we have the time on our favor. We have the fact that nature did it quickly. We have the ingredients in our favor for answering yes to that question. So that's why any astrophysicist will not deny that likelihood.
Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson, what a wonderful pleasure to get to talk to you. Astrophysicist, director of New York's Hayden Planetarium, and let's not forget, host of Star Talk. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
New from the Fox News Podcasts Network.
My name is Kennedy, and welcome to my podcast, which will, I humbly say, single-handedly save the world. You're welcome.
It's Kennedy Saves the World. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
And now, some good news with Tanya J. Powers.
Small, simple acts of kindness sometimes have a ripple effect that travels the globe. Take, for instance, the blue refrigerator that sits outside a hockey academy on Wusong Street in Hong Kong. It's filled with packets of instant noodles, biscuits, tins of food, and even socks and towels for those who might need them. On the front of the fridge, there's a sign that reads, "Give what you can give, take what you need to take." The Associated Press, who reported this story, says Amin Khan is the one who created this community refrigerator after seeing a film about other people doing the same thing. Khan is the founder of a sports foundation that's located on Wusong Street, and he found the fridge at a garbage collection point and painted it blue. He says the project is about dignity, and he wants everyone to know the feeling of security, like when they can go home, open their fridge, and get food. His blue refrigerator project has gone viral on social media, and people drop by just to leave food inside. Some people leave snacks. Others leave masks to keep their community safe from COVID-19. One woman who was leaving a donation was asked by the AP why she was doing it. She said, quote, "A small act can already show our kindness and contribute to this world." Something to take with us into 2021. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
It's time for your Fox News commentary. Liz Peek. What's on your mind?
President-elect Joe Biden, like most Americans, is probably thinking about New Year's resolutions. Here are 10 helpful suggestions I would make. Number 1, please stop that little jog you do when approaching a podium. We get it that you want to appear youthful, but Tom Cruise, you're not. Ditto the aviator glasses. Channeling Top Gun is so 1980s. Those glasses are not only dated, they make you look shifty, which is a truly terrible idea, especially with so many legitimate questions swirling around you and your son, Hunter, your brother, Jim, and what you did or did not know about the family trying to cash in on your White House gig in Ukraine and China. The liberal media won't ask you about those activities or whether you are, as Tony Bobulinski claimed, the big guy who was to be cut in on a shady Chinese moneymaker, but that doesn't mean those questions won't dog your presidency. Number 3, speaking of the media, resolve to host a normal press conference sometime soon. Do this without a teleprompter, without wife Jill at your side, without prearranged questions and rehearsed answers. Relax, let the fur fly. You can count on a mainly fawning liberal press. If there are a few challenging questions, just call the reporters dog-faced pony soldiers and leave them guessing. Seems to work every time. Number 4, stop saying that a 100-day national mask mandate will magically stop the spread of COVID-19. Some 80% or more of the country already wears masks, and the figure is above 90% in high-risk areas. Number 5, resolve that you will stop pretending to be the candidate and now the president-elect for the little guy. You took tens of millions of dollars from big business and big tech, the ultimate special interests you so frequently rail against. Number 6, please stop referring to Kamala Harris as the president-elect, as you have done on several occasions. It's confusing, and frankly, your election is plenty bewildering as it is. It is also, for much of the country, downright scary. Number 7, please, Joe, resolve to stop reminiscing about the good old days in the Situation Room and suggesting that gathering folks in that storied White House locale will fix all of our problems. I get it that you remember fondly your times in that space sitting alongside your buddy Barack, even if most of your suggestions on key events like the raid that killed Osama bin Laden were completely ignored. Number 8, promise to not offer Hillary Clinton a job in your administration. I know she said she's, quote, ready to help, unquote, but bringing her in would be a horror show and would certainly not unite the country as you have vowed to do. Number 9, resolve that John Kerry is forbidden under any circumstances to again haul James Taylor out of retirement to croon, "You've got a friend." That was then Secretary of State Kerry's plan to assuage the enraged French people when Obama failed to join more than 40 heads of state in a solidarity march following the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attacks. Number 10, you have often said that you wish to bring the country together. You might start, Mr. President-elect, by trying to understand why over 74 million people voted for President Trump and respect the policies of his administration that have been successful, like the brilliant Abraham Accords. At the end of the day, all Americans should want this country to be stronger, safer, and more successful for everyone. Achieving that goal is how you can actually bring the nation together. Happy New Year, Joe. This is Liz Peek, columnist and Fox contributor.
You've been listening to the Fox News Rundown. Stay up to date by subscribing to this podcast at foxnewspodcasts.com. And for up-to-the-minute news, go to foxnews.com. It's the Perino and Steyerwalt I'll Tell You What podcast. Dana Perino of The Five and Fox News political editor Chris Steyerwalt dissect the ins and outs of national politics. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Love Fox News? Click the subscribe button to get more of the news and opinion you trust. And click the Fox News Rundown playlist for the latest episodes.